Hello, let's occupy the seats in front.
When you see the chairs again, and then it's going to that picture. The number is smaller compared to the chair. So please move forward. So we have
A good dialogue. Okay, so let's begin. Can I have a volunteer to lead us in a word?
a volunteer for prayer.
Jesus, thank you. Jesus, and just reach yourself something with you, which will open up our mind, understand all that is going to be shared today. Lord Jesus, enable us to be able to implement what we're supposed to do, the betterment of the country. We have prayed always, trusting and believing in the betterment of Jesus. Amen. Thank you so much. The next agenda item is introduction. So I request that we start with you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, okay, ladies and receiver. I completed my Bachelor of Laws from Macquarie University, and at the moment I'm African Development. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Pascal Diakogue. I work with Climate Assisting Conservation Maintenance Waste District. Hello, everyone. Hello. Yes, I'm Alex. I work with the Anti-Corruption Coalition. Good afternoon. I am guest working with people.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Hamba. I work with TEENS. TEENS is the Training Education Public and Sustainability.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sherry Namita, I'm in charge of Education and Environment. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Deal is Vice Meeting, and I work with the Political Question Organization.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. There's a room that's my name. I want to practice on the community.
My name is Robert Bachika.
My name is Miriam Kawan. I work with Emily.
I'm Reverend. I work with Emily.
Okay, my name is Christine Mbatusa. I also work with Emily. We also have our online participants. Can we have them introduce themselves?
Hello, my name is Jenna Montero. Hello, my name is Jenna Montero and I'm the District Natural Resources Officer in Uganda District. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mukandinda Winfred. I work with Wobdu Kisoro.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janita Okedi, consultant. Thank you.
We all know the people that we are with. We have representatives of the district, local government. We hope more will be joining us as we continue. And we also have civil society representatives, but also the academia and representative from the Ministry of Water and Environment. With that, let's proceed with the next agenda item, which is welcome remarks by Emily. I want to welcome Mr. Machika to give us the welcome remarks.
I think let me stand here. Yes, good afternoon and welcome to our dialogue on equity rights relating to our ethnic minorities or indigenous peoples. Like I introduced myself, my name is Robert Lotika. I work with Emily, but I also support government on planning for climate action plan, which is NBC. So we are doing this tasks or work together with our partner, WWF, the Worldwide Fund, the Nature Uganda Country Office, and the program known as the People Benefit Program, which is also having intervention in the Alberta. There we have partners, Soro, Sese, and other areas. So Emily's component is on governance and capacity building. And majorly our work here has been on issues of rights, but also building capacity on aspects of NBS. NBS is nature-based solution. This is the terminology which has emerged recently, but if you are used it to ecosystem-based adaptation, I can say you are along the same lines of nature. Yes, the same terminology as we use for natural climate solutions, where we are using nature to address climate. So we were, I think, in Bushenyi, I stand to be corrected, Christine. We were in Bushenyi recently, holding the second training team on aspects of nature-based solution, and we invited staff from the district local government and also our partners on this targeted capacity building on nature-based solution. I think we were awarded about 30 certificates. And of them, I forgot to mention our app. We work also with Apple still on the same program under WWF, the People program. And today we are discussing one subject which we have been documenting about. The subject of indigenous peoples, rights, equity, justice. Why is this subject coming towards the end of the year? You know very well that we are at crossroads with recognizing the indigenous. You know, the Royal Government of Uganda has not specifically recognized indigenous peoples. There is an ongoing court case of the Batwa, and one of the declarations the Batwa, I think, are trying to push for is to be recognized as a special. But you know, we have a big animal in the room called the Constitution. Constitution has treated all of us as indigenous. However, when it comes to projects, and this is my understanding, this is why I'm happy that we are having this dialogue. When we have projects, especially World Bank project, one of the safeguards which are triggered is the safeguard related to indigenous people. And government always puts how it is complying with that safeguard. Still ask myself, are we on a feeding document? Or we are trying to ensure that how we try to say we'll address the safeguard with ink. Recently, government has received result-based payments from the Green Fund and under the rate class. We are, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we are the first African country to receive 4 years ago or 6 years ago. We are being paid results of 20 billion. Our contemporary, Ghana, they are doing very well in carbon market, not in that we get receive the result. Or what we usually call the red plus safeguard. And in the red plus safeguard, all of the safeguard provided to protect for the enhanced password. Now, the question is, should we continue to circumnavigate around this special group category for standards? Only members or ethnic minority. But the argument is these ethnic minority, they which part is also special. One friend of mine called me, why do you want to keep in that if there is a case, for example, when I'm maybe Rwanda, and I want to file an assault case. The way I go to police to file a case will it be the same way this ethnic Batwa will file that case? Does this person know even the procedure of filing that case? Are lawyers even interested in giving them services?
Robert, you're muted. We can't hear.
Sorry, you can hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, my apologies. For how long have I been muted?
For a while, because the network has been going on and off. I think the last sentence we had was when you're talking about the community is sensitized. Do they know how to file cases?
Oh, okay. That's way back. So I say that we contracted a team of consultants, that there's the Nagawa, to help us and now go and do a fact check. What's happening as far as rights of these indigenous peoples are concerned? How are they conducting themselves? How are the relations? And what should be done? And having said that, we are looking at a way of how we leverage each other as Ugandans. And I want to state it categorically this one. NGOs have been claiming that they want to keep status quo because we earn when such people continue to live in forests. No. We are not doing studies to keep people poor. We do these studies to address intricacy and silent gaps, which some people see with the naked eye, but keep quiet. Today, I'm happy to see Pepe competing for political position in Morocco. It is my happiness. It doesn't require Africa to go to claim to be a Karamajong. I get a ticket for ADMP from the pet. But I'm so happy that after 5 years down the road, these people now are taking up political position. And for me, as Bachika, I would be happy that after 10 years of working with the pet, they are able now to claim their rights. And simply that's what we are looking at. Maybe I'm using a bad example of political season, but we're in a political season. All of us understand that it is the politics which govern how we. So in simple terms, what we are trying to say is that we know there are differences which will never be equated. I don't expect that a student in Kampala who has sat senior 6 in Kampala will suffer the same hardships as the battle who has sat maybe for senior 6. So, no. But what we are trying to say, as we ensure there is a level playing field, where a battle from Isoro can compete for the same education services as a Ugandan in Kampala. This is what we're doing in study. This is what we're doing in Uganda. To ensure that these people also live, attain a certain level. I used to joke with civil society that we book hotels for workshops. But how many of us go back to those hotels to buy lunch outside workshop? Meaning that many of us cannot even afford a plate at Africana, if I may say. When you go there and they tell you lunch, a plate of food costs 80,000. How many of you can afford it? But if we can put frameworks where instead of Africana only charging those who have worked, can Africana have a section where they have food for 40? Yes. You can go and buy tea and you buy it, which is 30. And I still get the same. I mean, is that someone who has bought lunch or they what? They take care. So this is the same thing we are trying to do here. We are trying to ensure that these categories of people can have leveled ground, enabling environment to get the same services as the people who have never lived in forests. Okay. Why should we assume that they only like to live in huts? Why should we assume that this category of people, they don't rely on handouts? Why should we assume that this category of people should not own land? Okay. So these are some things which we try to ask ourselves. And as we ask ourselves this question, we look for solutions. We had thought we would have colleagues from the judiciary here and the Equal Opportunities Commission, but because of, and Minister of Gender, but because of the interplays, this dialogue have been postponed and more than 3 times. It has really been difficult to have this category of people. But I'm told some will be joining us online as the time will be. So take this opportunity to welcome you and look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. I want to hand over our service. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bachika. Next on agenda, we have remarks from WWF, but they're not yet here. So I think we shall proceed to the presentation from Mr. Inunga. We can move to the presentation. You're welcome, sir.
I think the methodology is here. Very understandable. So I'll also take a chance to share the meeting. My name is Daisy Rumba, and I mostly work with myself. Until somebody says you come and work with me. So I just want to, I'm glad that you Emily has up with Gladys. She's not able to be here today for some reason. We did the rapid assessment of the situation. We did, I can say. It was not that we did it taking our time. It's rapid. And I believe that in this room, we are still going to get more room, but also we are still adding more as I will be telling you this information. So what I'm giving you is a snapshot. Having said that, I want to move as it brings us. I've been around working with partners for in and out since I think 2011. And I worked with Care International in Uganda under the Rights, Equity and Protected Areas program. And I think some people here like Penina have known about this. Sure. And so I know a bit of knowledge about the paper, but also have worked with them more and some other related programs. And so we have some of them who are part of just personal friends. You can talk with them, with club soldiers with them, and they are people like any other person. And so I personally continue to say that for me, I feel it is also another level of discrimination. Why do you want to call somebody when you are not being called what you want all the time? That is the question I always ask. you are in a community and they are single, these are bad. Why are you not saying you are also so? Okay, having that, we did work around situation analysis on equity rights and participation of partner in the implementation of nature-based solutions. So what we are presenting here is going to be much around nature-based solution, those areas of equity rights and how the partner have participated. But also, of course, we also have some other information that may not necessarily be nature. But when you look at it, it feeds into what you are calling the best solution. So this is kind of looking at everything holistically, but with a bias on best solution. This picture is a picture of our friends. These are from Kanab and Kisoro district. We met them and we conversed with them. That is one of the groups that we met as we are doing this work here. And we can call them Batwa, but are they any different from any other people? They are not. Even if they mix, I'll show you another picture where they are. But they are the same as the Bafumira, the Chiga, that side. There is no difference. No. That is just a background and outline, the presentation. You have background objective, the assignment, scope and target, methods and approaches, some limitations, findings, recommendations, and somewhere we have some conclusions. This one I don't want to dwell on it so much because he has able said much about it. So the background is he has actually given it, so we don't need to waste time around this one. Yes, good. So the objectives or tasks which we had at hand was to assess the status of the partners' equity rights and participation in relation to nature-based solutions, then examine the impact of nature-based interventions on partners' equity rights and participation, identify barriers, gaps, and power dynamics that limit the partners' access, resources, decision-making, and benefits from NBS interventions, and then provide recommendations for integrating water rights places and knowledge systems into NBS plan, governance, and implementation. Those were the key tasks that we had to kind of work around information around the scope. We looked at, we engaged Batwa communities in Rwanda, so districts, because that was where we looked at, but also we are also looking outside, because the Batwa are not necessarily in those two districts. They are even they even have a king in the region. So we have been even to some of these places, but so with some of the information cuts across what we know and what also we are able to get from partners in other districts. But the focus was mostly in these two districts. And also we looked at we conversed with district staff such as community officers, the other house, and also assessed we did some work with the CSOs working with partners such as UAP, but organization. I think I've already seen we went there as well. There's another one called Cardora. Then also in other government agencies, we were helping NFA and the OSTA there. And then some CFM groups, there is a matter of membership and partner community representatives, some investment and women. Those are the ones we looked up to, but also we had the target group at the police. The police I still have an assignment with them because they have one piece as a talk to us. And then also we had to talk to the magistrates the other side and take the limitations. The methods we have used, we have done some bit of reading, we have done some informal interviews, we did focus group discussions, and then some I've also observed, and here we are in this meeting, which I think we shall get some information as well, some guidance. Some of the key informants as limitations could not be accessed. the police and magistrates. So at that time, the decision was that they were very busy, so but good enough, I've got someone has put me in the room to talk with the police, at least in Rwanda, and have a good talk with us. Some key format interviews, informants were scared to give information openly, due to sensitive aspects around battle, e.g., accusations they have faced with the battle aspects of the. So some people, including even some civil society organizations, they give information that they don't want to give it straight or to say you can even say I'm the one who has said this. So people are having, I think that are very important because somebody has information, but they don't want to be very, very straightforward and say this one is what I know, or they would prefer to give it and don't say like the other ones. So let's move. And I think maybe it goes because some things I report, maybe that's where. I think that's where. And so in terms of the findings, we looked at the equity issues, rights and participation in relation to NPS. And then when you look at NPS, the bigger chunk also, you look at around issues of ecosystem services, issues around protected areas. Because that's where you will find the matter area most today, where you have those natural resources. And that's where those nature-based things are so concentrated most of the time. So we looked at if you are either going to have to have part of that space equitably, then you must not miss the issue of free, prior, and informed consent. And so we found that now when you go to government, local government, of course, the other organizations who are and they have tried in their own wisdom to consult the matter involvement of resource plans and maybe MOUs. Even when he says that the government does not recognize them as special groups, at least they have been effort by these particular people to involve the partner, specifically now and in a special way, consult them when they are doing some of these plans. And when I was in Rwanda, they actually pulled out this post-government plan and said, this battle, we are key in some among the protocols consult. A district forest development plan. And I have a copy there. There's also a section that talks about how they should involve these battle forestry issues. And then there is also the general management plan for national parks. I talked to one of the people I talked to in OA, for him who's free, is the planning manager. They want to make us the planning at work. And it tells you for us, when we are doing our now GMPs, we cannot miss out. Now, it doesn't matter what they talk about with them. It may just be something to say, how we talked with you, but at least have. That is a good start. Whether they are getting talking with them to say to get their views or what, but I think that's good to do. And so in those, and recently I think they have been doing general management plans for Windi and the Mugahinga, and they told us they talked to them. And then there are resource access MOUs, agreements, they are there. And when you go to UA, you find some of those where they have. Particularly, I talked to the battle and he wanted to find the battle should be. Never mind whether that is equitable, whether that is enough, but at least you have talked with them and said, okay, for you, you shall do this, for you, you shall do this. And of course, in the confines, within the confines, again, of what the policies and those set for those protected areas, because that's how they work. For them, they look at the policies and law and what they say. They may not look at the other side of the right of saying you know, in the forest, so you can have as much as you can. They look at the conservation the policy that is and fit into the pattern and say, for you, this is the match we can do. And those CFMs around HUA, for example, those ones even I know of it because I was there. I facilitated those processes, so I understand how the battle were made it. And actually, the CFM agreements around the 2 year, because they were done here, they were signed in 2023. They were instigated by the VATRA coming up and saying they are not being considered. And so NFA came in and specifically the terms of reference after was saying, can you make CFM agreements so VATRA only? But when we went down there, do those arguments, because also that is my expertise. The VATRA said, no, by doing agreements for us only, you are going to discriminate us more. We want agreements where we are with this particular and with this bound. So that's how it came about. And I have the terms of reference with me, and they said, no, you cannot do that. And even when we went to Rwanda in the district, I think Jen is here, it should be on this call. They were like, no, you can't do that, because that's, we are trying to stop, to disrupt, to stop discrimination and for you want to promote it. So the battle they said, don't do it. So how special can we now promote the battle within that kind of arrangement? It's now what we are looking at. So they have been consulted along those, and then consultations, they are not yet the expected standards, I can say. Because what is coming up is that even when they have been consulted, even by these other, that the staff who might be implementing some of these things will come and say, that is the argument, but here the practice, that's happening. Now the practice becomes different. Because it is written there, but now somebody might implement it differently. So that consultation is not yet, in some areas, linking very well with the practice. And then also, the CSOs that support these battle interventions, the information coming up is that sometimes we also, am I also part of the stage of literacy? You used to be. At those days. But even sometimes I am, that we are going there with predetermined projects. So the designs are predetermined, and then we always start consulting the data during the implementation project. For them, they are saying, but can't you tell us so that we tell you what exactly we want? So that one is something that is coming out. I don't know, but I think some CSOs are also making efforts there to address this. But that is also something that has been. So in terms of the free, prior, and informed consent, if you start coming and saying, here is the project, what are you saying? You have not involved me adequately, although you have now later. Now, in terms of participating, here now, if we go back, they are there participating, that CFM. How much they are participating is another question. Because you have so many back around, but how many out of that percentage are participating? So, like, if we went around the 2 year there, and even in the other bigger national parks, in Bahinga, and then the Seminiki National Park are there, and even when you go to Maine, they are all those MOUs. But how many of the partners are participating, and participating to do what? So that is where the whole thing is. But the structure, the arrangement for participation has been in place. But what effort has been made to go and get this motor? Who thinks that for me, I was being displaced down this side and to bring them and say, come now and be here. You find them there and you agree from there. So that's where the problem is. So you have also some, they are also participating in some of them in the development of database enterprises, beekeeping, mushroom growing, watermaking, yes. But how much? It's why the question is there. Then they are also doing restoration of degraded areas. I think I got a good thing of URP. I think they are doing some good work. And when you involve them, then you actually can do something. I think URP, when somebody talks to that literacy, I think she needs a club. She's doing some good work at the literacy of Kisuma there. And you really feel that even when she's talking, she has a feeling of what's happening. So there is some, the participation is differing from place to place. Some of it is on words on paper, some of it is practice. But at least there is some framework. The move of invasive plants, in Semliki National Park, actually they participate in the move of what. But they are removing those things from the land they claim was theirs. Would they have removed them if they were the ones still there, or they will still continue? So they are supporting wildlife, Uganda Wildlife Authority, but also some kind of employment. Yes, but at least they are being given priority to be employed there. The word is priority, is being given to them. So, this we are doing this as part of come and do it and get this job. Tourism development, a lot of things, guiding, telling stories, music, dance, and drama. We support from UA, NFA, MCT, including you have there in Niger. There are those efforts that are there. At least you see that they are participating in those ones. Even when they are just away from those areas, at least somebody say come and participate. But again, it is also the question comes: how many are participating? Because maybe and what is the trickle down effect of the benefits? Because now, like at Echuya, actually, when we read them, see that there was all a bucket failure there. And the battle themselves, I think this is a very good man called the guy. I think I know whether he's in this one. They have worked and put that trust battle afraid. But the something is coming there, what is coming out of there. If you ask the other battle members, they say, okay, we hear, but some of us are not benefiting. So, but at least there is a group of battle who can benefit from it, even if it is not yet well streamlined. At least it's better than nothing. Government programs, now this guy might look far-fetched, such as PDM, REP, livelihood fund, even this SAGE, the one for the elder people. Now they gave us some information in these districts. In the Rwanda, they were telling us some people that access to PDM funds. Then there are some people from Kalenjin there. They also, in that is the Rwanda district, so the CDO told us about 10 have access to PDM funds. Out of how many? And now, if you look at the PDM, for example, so that is made for those people who have no income. And the battle are in that class, at least many of them. So if you are having just even the numbers are the one figure, when you have gone so much, you are talking of 10. And then they say it's so much self-ice, like we have around 2,000 battle around. Because they said the population is estimated to be 7,000 in Uganda. So now you have only these ones. Even if you set it up to 100, still that number is small. So that is where, but maybe it shows you that there's something moving. But also we got to understand that for government, for them, there is no special person. For them, it is everybody. As he said, for them, government puts the program and said it is this one, apart from these other gender aspects. But if they are doing to that population, you are old, if you are a local, also get this one. If you are a Mchiga, if you are anybody from apart from there who is mixed also, we are treated. But we are saying maybe the population. And I'm going to show you what is the problem now is when it comes to practice. Because the group formation, the what are going to join these groups, where the particular are, the others or not. And if they are to join, who is going to help them join that one? There is an upcoming government project. We are told, I think in Rwanda, I think it's a good thing, as he has said, that it is that is going to be supported by World Bank and the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, and it is going to be called GROW, that wants to support the background tourism where they are. sub-county. Maybe, and now that goes back to what Robert said. If government here is not in the other documents recognizing battles as special groups, but when it comes to this one now, they are saying this one is going to focus on them. So what are we trying to do? That is, no, this is one of our friends, and the Equatorial State, of course, they are demonstrating that house of theirs where they used to stay in good houses in trees. That is what they prayed of the battle, I think, in the Chia forest. No. This group of battler is one of those that we consulted those days when we are doing the safe environments. And this is one of the groups that said you are not going to do a safe environment for us only. We want to be with the battle, with the other tribes. We belong there, we fight from within, we don't want to be discriminated. Because for them, they thought being there as a government was discrimination. So that was in 2023. But they are very interesting people. That gentleman there, they call him a judge, this old man. This one. He sits on one of the LC committees and he's good at looking at cases. Is it in Ramahan? There is a place called Ramahan. Now, representation and being part of the decision-making bodies. Now, again, we are going to look at the figures here. You will be seeing one Muta is a member of a mother's union in a parish somewhere. Then one Muta is a member of Ramahan LC committee. Actually, it is that gentleman I was talking about, who is the judge there. He's there, but at least he's on a committee also. Because also being on that committee is kind of ridiculous. Get a being on a committee of an LC one in the village. It's kind of ridiculous. Then you have now those CFM, because this was deliberate, the CFM groups now that we have, that Mekanda is called Environment and Conservation of Government Association. You have one representative on the main committee, but now they are more on the subcommittees for beekeeping, for fire guns, for what? But now when you come to the main committee where after we had left, they elected the committee on finance and they said, they didn't want to bring the battle where the goods are. They know there is no mutua there. Because that's where money is now. So there is no mutua. But that is the second group. And then you down here there is a cooperative, cooperative limited in Uganda, and then you have some battle represented there. At least there is something. But the question is, are those significant enough to make a decision? If I'm one out of the many, can I also co-fund there? I'm happy. Because that's what we're talking about. Can I also make a decision? But at least there is something starting because of some efforts to make also society, the battle themselves are coming up and saying we are here. So. And also this, and also government recognizing by the way. And I want to say this, that government, local government is recognizing the importance of having this people being on that. I will show you some picture as we move ahead. Where we were in Rwanda and said this is a district. Rwanda is where you have the Minister of State for Finance. This thing comes from there. Comes from there. And that direction plan is. But you have one of the poorest people coming from that district. So it becomes a bit challenging when you look at some of these things more. Now, in this group, tell me who of you can gun point at the motor? These are all people now, they are mixed. Who are the people there? Which one? White. Why? You see,
Justify one parameter.
you see. That is the problem. We are having. These people, yeah. And by the way, in this school, now I will tell you, this one is not even is a motto, for example. No, I'm saying this one is a motto. So this and that is now the statement we have, and people think, hey, you look a motto. You are the one. But what is wrong with it? Even if I am, what is the problem? Even if I am a motto, what is it? What is the problem? So that is the kind of now, and when we went to the CFM meeting that time, actually we went and made chairs there. I know the time is not on my side, but let me tell you this one. We made chairs there, plastic chairs, and some benches. And when we come to sit, the people there who are organizing the battle, you sit down on the side. It's happening. The chairs are still there where this one. Others are not. We said, no, I told them, what's wrong with it? I'm not going to do anything. Come and sit here. They came and sat. And the meetings went on and until we finished. Now, why do you want to sit on a chair and they doesn't sit down? What are the kind of things? Let's move. Access. Yes, there are now those recognized access. You know, if I have an MOU, if I have an MOU with you, if I have a CFM argument with you, NFM, you are not going to stop me now because I know the time I'm going there and I can pick my things and move on. At least that is that recognized access. But before that, then you would go there and say, you know what are you doing in the forest? And even you are being asked by another person who has found you also collecting the same resource, it's also trying to collect the same resource, but he's asking a good. He's also there illegally, but he's asking this one, what are you doing? So now there is that recognized access, which is, I think, for us a good thing. And then you have preferential treatment given to the water around the Chuya to access these resources, at least not once, at least twice, while other times only Saturdays. Now there was another situation when the negotiations were taking place. So at least there is that one preferential treatment. Then you have now people going to worship freely. Before that, they were not going to worship their God. They have their gods in their place and where they go to worship. Now they are, at least that access is recognized. But the injustice that has also happened is that, quite forget this, is that some people will tell you, yes, we used to have our gods, but now we have forgotten how to worship. Because people have been locked out, not going there. So they have forgotten how they worship. They have been forced to go into these other religions. So they did not believe in them. So you have that issue. And they told us some of them now cannot. And then also they fear discrimination, because if you go and worship, when you lose a person as a Mtu, the other Christians will not come to marry. So that's why you worship the other things in the forest. So they fear also that one, also even when they know that they want to worship their gods. Now you have several CSOs also supporting the water access, MPS. Of course, we have Google, you have admins, you have. There are a number of CSOs, at least that are supporting. And then you have people also where the water securing some bit of land with support of these organizations. But now again, what is happening is that you have helped me to get the land. For some reason, you are telling me I can't give you the land document because I know you might sell it if I give it to you. And so there are some of these organizations that have not given enough arguments which they vote for them. But you have got me a shirt. Now, why are you saying that you should keep it in my vote? It is my shirt. Give it to me. If I said it, let me say it. But maybe there is a reason why it's a good reason. Maybe. Because I'm also told somebody told us that some of these men they treat their warrant and what they can't sell the land. It is good. But why were they not selling the forest when they were there? So there's that one. And then you still have the majority not having access to land. They are still squatters on the other people. Yes, there are those efforts, but the majority also don't have. So, yes, we thank the other people who have helped, but we are still saying these people, we are somewhere. But also you have another person, which I got from a government official, which I don't want to say, who said, I'm not one, I think there was a government official and another one who said, but the Batoa were not in the forest. They were only staying around near the forest. Some of us agree with them. There's that person. Yes, it could be that some of them were not staying away in the forest. But there could be also those who were also staying in the forest because it is not now. So you have those versions, depending on where somebody was. If I am here, I'm touching the ear of an elephant and tell you what I think the elephant looks like. Another one will tell you the elephant looks like. So depending on where you are. Okay. Now this is the preferential consideration for the value now in a 2 year. Now here it has been declared a national park, although Parliament has not passed yet. I know they're supposed to go to Parliament. We don't know that this preferential treatment will remain because the negotiation that time was to give them more because they are having a problem. So you have in the fire in those places, this decade is much. It's Bufunjo, some association from Bufunjo South. This one make something is from Murora, there's something called Murora. For them, they are going there twice a week, Saturday and Wednesday. Now the other people, the natives, they go once. Then here they are going 3 times in Muko. They go Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and also in the Kanava, the other side of Kishore, they go also Monday, Saturday, and Saturday. Why? Because not that they are cooking a lot, because also they don't have all that. But there's a condition that they get that fire and sell and because they still sell to the other households. And so in terms of conservation, there is an argument that we have not changed anything because you are still getting a lot of this coming out to support the other communities. So it is there. Then collection of fire or craft materials, you can see the days that are given, then access to patio sites and then tourism sites, and then the involvement of supported enterprises, and then taking that leadership also with some. Now the subcommittees where they are prominent, like craft making, firewood collection, cultural tourism, herbal medicine. There you see a lot of people because that is where they are also having interest. So at least you see some bit of that, but does that one replace? Because you see, me, I used to go there anytime I want. And the other reason behind this, why they even gave them 3 days, the park told us that for them, they produce their children from the forest. They don't produce from outside. So you starting telling me not to go there, you are saying I should die. Because for them, they make their children from where, and that's why you see the battle, they will go with their husbands and wives. They reach there, they do their things and then go. That's why they believe they can make their children. That's it. So you can see even when you are giving 3 days, who told you that the days you have given is when I'm supposed to do? Is that right not also disturbed? Who told you that it is money? Who told you? Who told you that we give Tuesday or Saturday? That is when I will. Do you know how my body is working on those days? So there are still issues of, I think, rights. Yes, there are some rights being addressed, but also there are other internal things that we need to find. Can we move? This is one of our good ladies. She was demonstrating how they harvest the fibers and how they process them. Access-based services. We have been at least told from the district local governments there, and now the workers are also being given some priority to access basic services such as health and education. How much that one is I think it's how much that is in progress. And then there are also, I think those health centers, they have some outreach programs where the workers are called upon to, like around those Canava, some other places, they find you, they take the services nearer to the community. Immunization, instead of waiting for them to get to the other side of the health center. And I was told that if you look at the Baka children, some of them now, at least they look better because they have been immunized, they have been what? There's a time under care when there was some research done on the population of Baka. I don't know what it is now. Instead of having a pyramid kind of, the other one was inverted. Fewer children, more elders. That is a dying population. I don't know what it is now, how it looks now. Whether it has now improved how much children than the elder ones, they are weak by now. And then there is, of course, you have high school dropouts. Even when there is some education, there is a high school dropouts due to lack of money. Children are harmed, they will not stay there. Of course, that's across many of our children also in other schools. And examination fees. Now, P7 senior 4. And who goes, I think there is a good leader who told us. Some of them can go to P7 and even go to secondary school. But then when teachers there, this examination fees, nobody is going to pay it. It is not there. Maybe some organization will support here and there. But the families will not manage to pay that money because it's expensive for them. So they drop out at that level. Then the decent housing is not there for many of them. Of course, they have been able to construct some houses for them, but many of them not there. And then also we are told some of them abandon the houses because they fear noise from rain, heavy rain drops. They are not used to these things of houses. So when the rain falls on the houses, they move out. And then they also have some still have their beliefs that in using a toilet, you may not get children. So then you have all those issues there. Look at that house. That is a house of a person like you. That lady, that is her house in Rwanda district. One of those districts that you cannot think is a poor district. That one. Yeah. But you know what? She is even see the squatter on somebody's land. So see the squatter there, and that is her house, but the landlord's house, of course, is much bigger. No. This photo also was, that was this is a retired district government officer for Rwanda. So we had gone there and you can see that house. That one now is better than the other one. The other one was good. This is a place which is very cold. That place can be cold. You know, those of them that Kabale and so they can be cold. Now you have children staying there. You think pneumonia and other diseases will not affect those children staying in those tackling and so on. That kind of heart. But somebody that is his house. Move. Now, this is another improved house for the, I think they were constructed for battle. Yeah, at least, but we also found some other houses of the Bachiga and some other Afundira who also are like this. So this is at least moved down. But still, by your standards, it is not equal. Do you see that house? That house is neighboring the other house where the district development officer, the district community development officer. they are in the same locality. You have this one, you have the other high court. Telling me, these are all people having land, and you are there. So who should help the other really? For at least the person to move a step further. You see, all of us have a role to play. Me, I was thinking that each man has the role to play, and every other person. How do you, if I was the one, I cannot neighbor this person. Then I'm in that one because I can afford at least some few items. If I'm in that one, I'll make sure that this person refuses. But you can see, no, benefit sharing, those butter trays, I think that's where I can get some benefits. In terms of now, money and so on, country dances, which are the provide direct income. So the butter use their knowledge and skills of their culture, and they can dance around and do work and then get money. Actually, the butter around the 2 years, we asked them about this national park that it can be said, for us, we are happy, let it come. And we were asking around whether we would want to have it national park, because NFA does not give us anything. So, but the other people there, why our fellow butter in wind and Bahia, for them, when they go dance around, they go to guiding, they go in their butter place, they get some money. So for us also, we shall dance. And this one is a national park, other than here in anything. That is how. And yet somebody had wrote a saying, and I think accused them of pay. They have not been accounted. They were not consulted. But for them, they are saying they were consulted and they have to come. We don't know if it's true. They have all those sorts. So they are benefiting from nature-based activities here, medicines, trails, some of those tour guiding and so on. But the question is, how significant is that benefit to the rest of the community? Maybe it's just a few of those. And then the other question around this is actually around, you are calling it a butter trade, but is it all butter that benefit from it? It's a few of those who have benefited from it, not all butter. So why do you call it our tribe's land? And when we are not benefiting from it, all of us from it. So impacts, of course, the ancestral lands in the name of conservation have been taken. The right to access land and use the proceeds have also been limited. Then the increasing focus of government. Okay, there is increasing focus of government to ensure that because of some noise around, ensure that education and health facilities are provided, but maybe not to a great extent. You have NBS interventions. The gap related to decent housing is a problem. Why decent housing and housing as such? This got us sleep on mats. Now you have limited them to say, don't remove. There's a small grassland there in the Chuya. It's a nature reserve, and I think that's the area knows what's in nature reserves, how they are treated. They are being told, don't cut that grass. And so when they are not cutting the grass, then they cannot make the mats. And so when they are not making the mats, then they have no mattress, so they can't sleep. Then the house, usually those houses are from grass. Now, what do I used to do? There is no alternative. We are not giving an alternative. So it is that kind of thing. And then the right speak to demand, and demand to be heard. I think it is increasing. The ones are talking by them, if you listen to them. Somehow. It's not like those days. Some people are talking for them, but they are also talking. Never mind whether they are talking something that may not be correct, because I've been hearing that even when if perceived where they feel have not been involved, some people are saying there are some butter who are just claiming who actually have been in those meetings with perceived. But at least it's a talking. If it is wrong, yes, we can rectify it, but at least somebody is talking. Maybe it's not adequate enough. That's what may be the cause. Now, the other one is that increases the condition for them to participate in conservation of those places, of course, where the is now. And then there is restricted access to some of these, because it is restricted, even if I'm accessing what I'm restricted. So it's an impact. As you want to conserve those database activities, you are also restricting. And then increasing the environment and recognition of decision making, and then also the other thing of involving what organizations. You are seeing a way, at least of where some background making some their own organizations. They are making theirs, and also we have some community groups coming down with the matter themselves. So I think for me that one is a strong thing where they are organizing their efforts to speak out. Move down. Limited access government programs, all this. Here the key point is you have government programs where the backers are paid, even when government has put them open. The backers have no IDs. The backers, some have no IDs. Those who have IDs have tried. And then some of those, the budget of them, the IDs, somebody is saying, can you give me money? At first, they even didn't have the information, not get ID, national ID. Now, when they are renewing, they are telling them, give 10,000. This impact doesn't have. Of course, that is corruption down there. It is corruption. That for you to register, to have an ID, bring money. And when they are not getting money, then they cannot join PDM. The national IDs. First of all, in the beginning, they didn't have information that there was something called the national ID. Secondly, now when they are renewing them now, somebody who is on the renewal table is saying, if you don't have 10,000, you are not going to get this ID. So the worker are going to have it. So they are losing out. They will not get it. So you have that problem, and this is the part talking themselves. That's what they are going through. And so when you don't have a national ID, then you don't get the other money for all that for the elderly. Even PDM, I think, becomes difficult. You cannot succeed in getting. So those are some of the reasons why you find. And then those days also where some of those registered, the old people. By the way, there are people as old as even 100, but you find them strong, 100 years. But somebody has been registered after you are even young. So he's registered as underage. And so because he's underage, even if he has an ID, he will not get the other money of the elderly. You see what we are saying here? So there are all those aspects around there. And then some cannot be also, and some of them also, even when they know by them, I don't know for some reason, they are not getting those groups. So they're coming to say, join the groups, that's when you can get the money. And for them, others also. So there is also the other side of them. Like that's as like other community members of them, not also being proactive. No. I think I'm about to finish this. Barriers, Diakogue groups, mindset. They also want to put things depending on how they are now using it. Yes, they are also, if you meet them, you say, okay, wait the money, you have met us. Can you give us some money? But also, maybe they have nothing. Whenever they see a person, they expect. So there is also the other mindset for free things. I think maybe some people should have more also. But also maybe it has a background that they have nothing, so they expect. Then also the mindset of the discriminators that being a little is the worst thing. Because they were saying us, this is the model. This, have you seen any person? So the other people also have a mindset, the people who discriminate, that being a motor, I think your ways are pulling the road. I don't know what. So it is a problem as well. So I think civil side, if you have developing projects, then you need to go projects around changing the mindset of these other people who discriminate as well. Not looking at the matter themselves, targeting the discriminators as well. And then you have that some better elites are corrupt. There's also that one that is coming, that narrative, that once one of them is also going comes out of the who are whatever they become corrupt and they don't mind about others. It is also coming. It's a barrier, but it needs to be investigated further. And then you have limited empowerment. In some cases, because you have a few of them who are educated, And then you have this point which Robert said. Now, I want to say something here. You said that people are saying supposed to want Batwa to remain there so that we continue making money. But also, as society, we are saying the same thing that some of us, ourselves, the civil society, are pointing fingers at each other. I think it needs to be investigated instead of defending it. It could be that there are some of us civil society people who are also wanting to benefit by the governing party they have. It needs to be investigated. And I think in the Solar District, they have, I think I was told they have made a committee where they will be sitting and they can look at some things. They can look at and say, you are one of those who's bringing problems. So are we doing service to the Batwa, or we are doing service to ourselves? It's something that we must question. And we cannot cover it. People are saying it, and we need to find out. And then some Batwa have an opportunity to access income. Those who have an access, and this one is something. You give them the money, they go drinking. They can really drink, these guys. they are really drinking. And the worst thing, even they are going with the children in the bar. And so they are with recommendations. The issue of land documents, the recommendation may not be very material, but maybe it is something that the not are complaining about. That don't think, some of them don't think that they have the land, even when you have it. Because you are keeping the documents. So where should these documents be? And we also know that also some of them might say. And when they say, they go back to this. So it is there, we can craft together, but here so far we have said maybe local government they will do something like that. That will be trouble. So, but also maybe the thinking is that if those who bought are also genuine, they can keep the whatever. But there is something there. They are not feeling the land ownership when you are keeping the documents. They are only having the access to the land. And you know, for when you are looking at nature-based solutions, like now tree growing, some tells, I rather bamboo, please go here. This land is that I am just being helped to be here. It's not mine, it is for the who have the documents. I think it is a value also to have nature-based solutions. So like my land here in Uganda, you tell him, those old people that grow trees on my land, they tell you this land has the land. It is a value. I found it in Canada. People with the land complaining about it. So, but I think we need to deliberate involvement of the Batwa, more Batwa in government programs. We need for empowered to be empowered in group dynamics for national management and all those aspects, so that they can keep the money and make it for themselves. Maybe if we don't about the land for themselves, they might feel it is theirs instead of people. Need to be encouraged to participate in this through their comparative advantage. That thing of where they have knowledge and skills in profit making and cultural development is a good thing. They can be encouraged in that direction still, even if they were having other land somewhere. It's a good thing still they can support on it. Then the mindset, I think it needs to be worked on as well, somehow. Because also you don't need to say me and Mutu. Then the other one is also saying you are the Mutu. You are so have you ever been in a situation where you discriminate yourself? Also, you can do self-discrimination. So it is also happening to them, but they are also being okay. Put control on exploitative interventions by stakeholders disguising to support the battle. That is the thing I was talking about. So we need to have some controls. How do we identify, first of all? How do we control? So that you can even name and shame somebody who is doing looking for interventions for themselves, whatever. Selfish interests. Then supporting the worker profiling their culture, establish cultural management centers, promote collective management. This one is having up the worker saying, okay, you just ask, but you give us a place where we can also have our cultural things, maybe like a museum or something. And then there is need to have a desk maybe for indigenous groups in the issue of gender, labor, and social movement. If it's not yet there anymore. Now that it's saying that the government is not recognizing it, it needs to be there for those indigenous groups. In conclusion, addressing the barriers and gaps of background power dynamics that lead to better access to social development is a gradual process that needs time and also from all the concerned stakeholders. But you don't have to delay when even a change can happen to you. If it can happen, let it happen. When it is slow, let it be slow. So it's a gradual process because there are so many things there. You can't change my mind so easily to think that I'm not being discriminated. It is going to be a gradual process. Attitude change and all those things. But the efforts are in place, but they are a bit gradual. The conflict of interest through this support is a glaring one, but there is little commitment to speak out. That thing is there in many ways. Even you have seen that government, when they want to documents, they will say the safeguards, and they put the safeguards for that. But generally, the other side, maybe they are not thinking about it, as he said. That is what is true. So we need to be serious about these people. And then we see maybe something good might happen now. But lastly, for me, background, are people. They are people actually. And when you are with them, maybe you don't need to emphasize. You don't need to emphasize the word you are part of. Because they are people like others. They are good people. They are like you have now, like in Obodo, there is a very interesting level of so I want to thank you for listening, and I want to say that this report is still being written well, and this will be a snapshot of it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Iromba, for that detailed presentation. I know you've all noted a number of issues, but before we proceed, let's give ourselves a few minutes to know the people that joined us. Briefly.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Caroline Julie. I'm an environmental activist. I'm happy to be here today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lynette Namkwaya. I work with Ministry of Finance.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Diakogue from the Passion Plan Committee.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. That is my name. I work with the environmental happy to be here to join our partners meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Kandwanao. I work with the Project Research Field.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adrian Musime. I work with Data Planet Initiative. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you all for joining us. Do we have people online that joined us later? We need to know. Okay, I see Ms. Danika. Can you please introduce yourself? She's the only one that joined later. She's able to hear.
Oh, in-house.
We still have one more.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daphne Kamuntu. I'm an advocate. I'm glad to be.
As insistent. You go and tell you my name, I want to do another one. But not to check what the is.
Okay, thank you all for joining
Hello,
us.
everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm called Zanika Penina. I work at the United Organization for Backward Development in Uganda, and I work as the ED. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you so much for the presentation.
Welcome. Thank you for joining. And one more. Okay, let's proceed. Let's appreciate Mr. Irumba once again before I go. Look, I know you've all noted issues. I've also noted mine, so I'll not waste a lot of time. Let's hear from those that have comments or supplements.
Or questions.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Daisy, for a detailed report and a presentation. What I'm going to mention maybe is in the bigger report, but it would be good to hear that from you. I was just curious about where are these rights coming from? Where are they derived from? Where is the basis for the Batwa to get to enjoy these rights? I did see the Constitution being mentioned anywhere in the presentation. There's articles on participation, Article 36. There's Article 32 on affirmative action. There's Article 21 on discrimination. There's Article 37 on cultural rights. It would be good to have a background basis of these rights and what justifies their having to enjoy those rights. I think the other limitation that you mentioned in passing is that the projects that reach the Batwa are donor-driven. And when a donor gives you a project, they have expectations for you. So there are some things you find a partner not going outside of because it's donor-driven. And I think that's a limitation for enjoyment of some of these rights under NBS. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Yes.
Before we take the physical, we have the
Online, because of the internet issues, can we have, you never know when the network might not be stable. So we can have Penina speak now. Miss Danica Penina online. We have to Penina. The online Penina.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you so much for the presenter. Mine on, I will comment on the presentation that has been shared. And I will go straight to the findings. Under bullet 3, I'm sure since you are in a meeting, you'll be looking at the bullets that I will be talking about. Under bullet 3, there was an issue of the challenge. To us, as WOBDU, we look at bullet 3 as lack of dissemination. Once you do the research work or the consultation like this one, and you don't bring in the feedback, one, there is a research fatigue to the community members. And here I'm talking about the Batwa, yes, to all community members, but looking at the people work with and the people that were contacted on natural-based solution, the Batwa, you could have got this bullet 3 because of lack of dissemination. We know it has been a challenge, and also the approach used. So the bullet 3 has to be really looked into and don't it is. Then on I'm not looking at it, just noted down because the presentation, I don't have it put somewhere so that I read everything that was on bullet 4 under findings. But it was like CSOs, looking at CSOs and interventions. I would suggest and to make it more easier and taken into consideration by CSOs. Let's not put everything in the same basket. There are those, I would say that my suggestion would be some CSOs do the intervention, not to sample out that, because the interviewers could have interviewed some and didn't interview some. The Batwa that we've seen in pictures does not represent all. And just some NGOs, some CSOs, not the CSOs as is. Then under rights and tenure, on bullet C, there was some issues of worshiping, the Batwa worshiping their ancestral land, their ancestors and ancestral sites within the protected areas. I won't really take much comments on this, but from the experience and the knowledge and looking at the protected areas, apart from the Batwa trail, the Mugahinga Garamake, and another one in Bugindi National Park, the Buniga Forest Experience and the Forest Experience in Irubuguri area, where they do participate as guides, it's not worshiping at all. Whatever they do, they are just making like what they used to do to the tourists. And to me, I don't take it as yes, they have, as it is written that they have access to the worshipping sites within these protected areas. Because protected areas, they can't enter without forest guards. And being a protected area, if it was a Nechuya forest reserve, I would say yes, but not in protected areas. Then bullet 4, under access to Batwa basic services. G, if you look at it, it should be deleted because it talks about, if I can recall, I didn't note it down, but I am sure it talks about the raining. Rain makes noise and the Batwa run away from these houses. No, strongly no, because, because that G, let me look at it so that I comment it very well. G, some Batwa houses constructed, yes, this is rainy. The Batwa nowadays, they do construct their houses with iron sheets. And looking at this G, it really contradicts, because the Batwa currently, in whatever they are trying to do as income savings, they are buying iron sheets by themselves. So now, what should we take? Should we take that they construct them and they run away? Or this is the information, the old information, which was related to Bundivujo so many years back. So many years back, it has been coming in quite often, and we really don't think this information should be kept at hand. We rather compare that time and currently. And then, to my understanding, when maybe this is just a question, when was this consultation took place? Just to compare with the pictures, compare with the information. Let's revise and we publish something that we share out something that will help both of us, both NGOs, the government, the community members, and ABCD. Then there was also neighboring comment by the presenter on neighboring with a flat house. The BATPA do not have an alternative, because if, for example, AICM, BMCT, WABDO, ABCD, NEMI has bought land somewhere, and a person who is rich enough to come and buy nearby, or the MUTCO has bought closer to that, because he or she does not have an alternative. What next? What would be done? Then in bullet 7, the information is contradicting, because the other side, it was a challenge. Now, this other side, the information is not really flowing for the readers to understand. And I'm about to finish, and that is recommendations. On recommendations, the tourism center that was suggested that would be constructed, we would like to understand which plans, which measures are put in place. Are we looking at one horse tourism center for all the Batwa? What are we looking at? Unless, this is a suggestion, unless these tourism centers are constructed each within the district, because the Batwa are so scattered, they are found in different districts, whereby if you look at, if the recommendation looks at one tourism center, it might not help, because for assuming it's constructed in Kisoro, the Batwa from Semrik will be, how will it be bringing in their materials to Kisoro? How will the Kanungu be? But probably the idea is very good, but only if this tourism center maybe is constructed per district, where they would put the transport to go to that tourism center. Then under conclusion, bullet 3, there was like, they are not open, there is something like conflict of interest. Well, this team could have found it challenging, but the Batwa are open. It's not like at 2000 when they would really take time to understand, to take time to listen, to understand the language and the concept on itself. But the approach, if the approach is very well articulated to them, and looking at the language barrier, they would be open and tell the truth and don't fear anybody. Even if there is a security personnel, they will tell the truth and they will not fear anybody, apart from those language barriers. If they don't understand, they would look at you and they won't express themselves. But if they are really understanding the and the that I have, but my colleague also has some. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nina. We'll take note of those comments. So moving forward, I request that whoever is making comments, please you keep them precise. And with that, we have water. Feel free to pick from the dispenser. We don't have bottles because of the plastic-free positioning, the plastic pollution-free policy by our partners. But we are also going to have tea at the back. So feel free to move with your glass of water. We have another participant, Winfred. You can please unmute and share your comments and any additions.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening, everyone. Once again, I'm Candida Winfred. I also work with WABDO. I have few comments about 4, in addition to what my colleague has supplemented. But the first one is on participation under CFM. Yes, it's good that we are looking at many numbers of what were being increased under CFM, but my worry is we may have many numbers, but how many are the decision makers among the Batwa? Who among the Batwa are the decision makers? We may have many of them participating, but when it comes to decision making, you find there is none. The decisions are made by the non-Batwa. Then another issue was on in the presentation, they mentioned something to do with an upcoming government project supported by World Bank, the GROW project to support the Batwa. But looking at what has been taking place and the requirements of the GROW project, I wish if this project is coming to the Batwa, they could revise and lower the standards to the Batwa expectations. Because among the requirements, we usually hear they need collateral or security, they need someone to have a bank account within a certain bank, of which majority of the Batwa have not reached that level. So if still the requirements are higher than what the Batwa can afford, I have a feeling this one will not help them. Then my third comment is that still under the presentation, some organizations which have supported the Batwa to buy land, they have increased. I think we need to add more and appreciate more, which are buying more land, like Fight for the Forgotten, Wobdu, Lift Up Jesus, the Baptist Church. Those are within Kisoro, to mention but a few. Then another comment, which maybe is the last, is on the issue of access to basic services, most especially on education. We also have to put in mind that despite the fact that the Batwa are also benefiting under government programs like education, some of them live far from these schools. You find a school is like 2 hours to go to the school, and even the schools are far, so it's also limiting them. And as I conclude on my comments, when we are looking at this, the issues of rights and equity, we also have to bear in mind that there are still high illiteracy levels, marginalization, and inferiority conflicts within the Batwa. So whenever we are trying to address this, we should also try to harmonize and look into these issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Winnie.
We go to the audience. Okay, let me start with Mr. Bester. Chinyinji.
Thank you, President, for the chance to talk to the audience, and thank you, Mr. Ilumba, for the presentation. I will straight away jump into the presentation. At one point, you mentioned the number of actors or stakeholders within the rights equity arena, and you somehow omitted big stakeholders, though you mentioned them later. This might be happening if they don't see themselves among the actors or stakeholders, and they eventually see themselves at the end. The case in point is BMCT, Bugahinga Mwingi Conservation Trust, which should have highlighted on page 1 rather than seeing it mentioned elsewhere. The other thing is, what is the scope of nature-based solutions or resources? Is wetlands part of the nature-based resources? What about the water itself. And therefore, we have to include catchment management plans to investigate them as to whether they take into consideration of the battle. I'm just asking you will enlighten me a little bit. It seems for your professional background in forestry, wildlife, I don't know whether you are wrong or right. No, not to include wetlands and water resources as nature-based. Therefore, you neglected the inclusion of those in this study. You missed out. You said you have a problem with talking to the police at regional level. My thinking is that we live in a polarized kind of situation where staff of certain institutions, it's not easy to talk to them unless you talk to the center. My proposals are that you endeavor to talk to the national level entities, which will therefore provide you with the guidance on how to talk to the regional level entities, e.g. the magistrates and the police. I have the same thinking with Penny and Zanika about education and capacity building vis-a-vis the representation and participation in issues, in the Batwa issues. Very few Batwa are educated, as your own results, as your own findings indicate. I actually got to know that there are 2 or 1 Batwa or Mutwa graduates from Kabale University. Therefore, for us to think that we can involve them, they can participate equitably, is over asking, is a big ask. But do we limit them at that level? I think it is a very big question to start lamenting over and over again when we should actually do the needful to try and bring them to education facilities, to try and build their capacity, and assess their impacts on participation. There is the aspect of climate impacts. Though you mentioned them in passing, where you mentioned the lady spending a night in that ramshackle house, but the impacts are not really clearly stated out. In the presentation, I don't know whether in the document it is done. We have impacts of weather, not so good for the community. There are extremes of coldness, emergence of diseases, blah, blah, blah. It might, if you undertake a critical look at the climate impacts, they are detailed enough to speak to equity and justice as well. Then lastly is the aspect of planning for people. I'm happy we have a planning guru forgive me, Mr. We have a planning guru here, but I pose the question here that is very serious. It seems there is a general lack of planning not totally for people, for Ugandans at large. We Ugandans, I'm hinging on the example you provided that any mutual walks anywhere, anyhow, with children to the bar and drinks, the money he will have sold something. We have gone too far, I think, in terms of limiting the population from such habits. Can we have some sense of planning for those who do not have ethos that you people, you should start drinking at this time and this time, and yeah, I leave it at that. I think I've been audible enough.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I see everybody is going to speak. Yes. So thank you. First, let's agree, colleagues. We all need to go back early, right? Right?
Yes.
So I beg we agree that we keep our comments short. If we are to manage time, which we've already not managed well. So I request that you keep the comments short. So let me see the hands. Okay, let me start from the back, then I'll come.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Mine are few because most of them are intelligent. Okay, first of all, I just wanted to make a comment on information that are really empowered and how people fight for them. I have a testimony, especially on the IFPA-CD project. They were consulted, yes, that was after the project had come. But even though they were consulted, some of the few of the issues they raised were not addressed, and this led into a petition. A petition was written, and good enough it was addressed very soon, next year. They will be given some support to do their local activities as Baton. With support from other local organizations, CBOs, that will be supporting them with some nature-based solutions. I also wanted to hint something that there is an eco-tourism plan for Batwa in Ichuya forest, where they're developing a trail for Batwa to showcase what Batwa is doing, including their culture. But I also wanted to ask commentators on the issue of keeping their land titles. You kept on mentioning it, but I kept wondering, what is the issue? Is it because land is being bought for them? Or is it because they are unable to keep their titles well, or their data well? So what do we do? Don't we need to make a recommendation on that? If it's an issue of capacity building, can we empower them? Thank you so much.
Mr. Kabu.
Thank you. I am the presenter for raising those issues. Now, what I have really my thinking. Now, from a planning perspective, and it's something we've done about Batwa, our Vision 2040 is in balance. They're really very low. Our numbers don't add up unless such communities are lifted. So therefore, what we need, of course, I recognize the importance of rights, participation, representation, equity. But now think of economic empowerment. Economic empowerment is very, very big and undertaking, which goes beyond rights, participation, representation, equity. So the question is, how do we get economic empowerment? How do we translate rights, participation, and representation into economic empowerment? We need to see how we translate those into economic empowerment with what work. We need investment and major investments in nature-based solutions, which will make, otherwise, issues of firewood, access to firewood, cannot really bring up the community. So we are thinking so low, sorry to say that word, but we need to go beyond if we are really moving about what the middle-income country that we want to be. So how do we make tangible investments into nature-based products that can really empower the Batwa to have opportunities, real value addition to the assets of the Batwa. Otherwise, we're going to have cultural dances, those are not good for them. We need more than that. Equity is not really one of them. And one key question I have, and is lifestyle sustainable? Given the dynamics that we're facing, population growth, do you think the lifestyle of the Batwa is sustainable? In my view, it is not. Look at it globally. The Aborigines in Australia, those in Amazon, they are on extinction unless we really change the way that they are. That's the planning. That was not a planning issue. It is an implementation issue. The plans are there, but implementation. So implementation, of course, the plan and then implement. So the how is an implementation rather than planning. Those are the issues I wanted to raise into the presenter, but thinking. Thank you.
So much, Mr.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Mine is going to be precise, particularly focusing on the whole of the program scope. We currently have been partnering with the National Theatre under the Cultural and National Heritage Program. There is a program we are doing, which is called the Disappearing and Hidden Cultures Uganda. But then we have discovered there are some cultures which are reached very, very far away, as far as being backward more than the Batwa, especially in northeastern Uganda. When you go to Chidepo, I think we have been in a Semulika actually to visit the Batwa last week, but one. Why can't we have some kind of program, or is there a way as this program advances, how you can ensure that all these other tribes, like the Ik tribe, the Chi tribe in northeastern Uganda, deeply in the Chidepo National Park, those are the tribes or cultures we have identified that their socio-economical activities or behaviors have so much to do or affect the nature-based solution setup for climate change. Maybe it would be, I will be advocating for that maybe in future as you're advancing with your program, you can also widen your scope of focus apart from the Batwa. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'll also be very brief. Thank you so much, Daisy, for the report. But when I sit here, I'm also interested, to know to whom is this report targeted? Because that is going to help a lot in how we formulation of the recommendations and the rate up appears. It's important to know maybe from Emily. Then number two is what paint for me a picture, because sometimes we tend to think that these Batwas are concentrated in one place. So because then that informs issues of access, how do you mobilize, how do you engage these people. But I see a lot of changes, I think, from what I've known before. They are across to a level that they are integrated within the community itself, to a level that they will even ask that someone where you say that don't engage us independently as Batwa, but approach us from the angle of everyone there. Like integrate whatever you're doing, integrate us in the programming and whatever is happening. See us as what? Similar. Those asks, there's a little divergence, there's a little difference that is happening, and you cannot be silent about it. So what is the real picture? Because I would be interested in knowing that. And then because of that, and coupled with what Lana has said, for me, I think versus maybe recognition, I know that I indicate the marginalization of these groups and all that, they are very critical and they are unique. But I feel like very many actors have gone into these groups and a lot of resources have already been invested, probably in rights and equity and all that. But at this point, where are we at? Because I am sure that these changes, the challenges have also changed, and there have been a lot of shifts in comparison to the trends and all that is happening in comparison to the resources. Some work has been done, like you've acknowledged. What exact challenges are we at this point addressing? And because that will lead in a change in the way that the interventions are being designed, and possibly maybe also help the planners and civil society that are going in there to engage this community. There are shifts that have happened, and I think those need to come out clearly and recognized in the report. Because if you're within the community and you're still seeing children going to bars drinking with parents, how come that is not happening in other communities and there are bylaws, ordinances that will hinder parents, children moving to bars to drink? Why is it not working in a district like Rwanda, to put it in context?
Thank you to our consultants. My recommendation or issue is regarding the rights, and I will speak in addition to what Anne said. I think before you delve into free, prior, and informed consent, you should probably have like a section. I don't know how the format of your report is, where you're talking about the rights. Then, like, probably you begin with the Constitution. Some of the rights that Anne mentioned, I think she did mention the right to clean and health environment under Article 39, and the right to life, because I think the issue of the Batwa people is fundamentally a human rights issue. So I think you have to have that in your report. And then I don't know how the interviews were conducted, if you probably had a section of people mention that. Are they aware of these rights? Do they even know that they are citizens? Have they heard of issues that are happening in other countries? For instance, the Aboriginals that you mentioned in Australia, where courts have upheld their rights. And then also another thing is to do with recommendations. Could you have like a recommendation on the judiciary? And probably like judicial trainings on climate justice and rights of indigenous communities, taking into account case studies like Australia and the United States. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I think this one interests Mr. Kagwa. Your presentation on benefit sharing and indigenous knowledge, it talks about a stingless bee which produces honey that cures cancer. That is very interesting. By March this year, the Cancer Institute had registered 738 patients. That was March. About now, December, I don't know. So having that kind of, I don't know, in the recommendations, you could have missed out benefit sharing mechanisms from commercialization of the product. But I think it's something that would be interesting for a large investment, because I don't know if it's an allegation, if it's true, or it's just give supportive treatment like NDA later categorized complex. So at first, they were claiming sure, but it would really be a very interesting scenario to have issue of cancer coming in from that side. Then also, under your access to basic services, A and B are a bit contradictory because it says government is prioritizing, but we're accessing health and education. But then the next one says many are dropping out of school due to food and examination fees. So maybe it would be, a reader would be interested in knowing which kind of, under the prioritization, what is the government really doing to prioritize them accessing school, because the whole government says schools are up. So to avoid the contradiction, maybe it would be good. I know you say it's work in progress, but it's good to know what is the government really doing.
All right, thank you so much. I think I'll speak to something to do with right to housing. I think you showed us the two contradictory pictures, but they are very characteristic of what the challenge looks like. But when you look at the solutions in terms of nature, I would have thought that probably you provide an alternative in terms of building materials and the rest, because that's related to the challenge we are trying to solve when it comes to adequate housing using low-cost solutions. Then secondly, which is the element of participation, I would have thought that probably would point out issues to do with things that relate with meaningful and active participation in the decision-making processes. I think the other ones are very detailed, but they're not very specific, whether they speak to a right to participate in terms of active and meaningful participation in terms of decision-making processes. So there are issues to do with power and influence, of course. There are things to do with opinion, leadership, and general decision-making process. So how effective is the process for them? Lastly, is we're talking about probably access issues, especially to nature-based solutions. There is an element that focuses on control ownership. So the way just can look at access, because access may mean that here you go and utilize, but you don't have any control over some of the materials we're talking about. And it's a huge limitation when it comes to resource utilization and maybe the other activities that come afterwards. Thank you.
The last one.
Thank you, Des, for the presentation. Mine is just simple. It's the question you've been asking yourself, out of how many? Because from what you presented, you're saying maybe 2 people are accessing SAGE out of how many? Because we are crafting the recommendations, maybe for the process review, we need to have that in mind, how many people are affected. So I don't know if we have that available in the district value when to, but we need to get the numbers right. That out of maybe let's say 1,002 people are accessing SAGE, then look at the impact of those people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and everyone, for the comments. So take them, good faith. Mr. Iroba will respond after this presentation is made. So let me request Ms. Okedi, Joanita Online, to start the presentation on, you can check on your programs. We have a presentation on how to advance rights and justice for ethnic minorities in Uganda. We are particularly looking at a case for Batu. And please feel free to pick up a cup of tea.
Thank you so much, facilitator. And good afternoon, everybody. Facilitator, how many minutes do I have?
15 minutes.
Pardon?
15 minutes.
15. Okay. All right.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay.
All right. Thank you so much, and good afternoon again. And thank you to our consultant for taking us through that elaborate presentation. So as mentioned, I'll be talking about advancing rights and justice for ethnic minorities in Uganda. a case of the Batwa. In my presentation, you'll come across, the word ethnic minorities, which will speak to rights and equality, and indigenous peoples, which will speak largely to land, culture, and collective rights. And I'm hoping you can see my presentation. Right, so I'll just give an overview. So our constitution, Uganda's constitution.
Slide format, the slideshow.
Is that better?
Yes, it's better now.
Right. Okay, great. So our constitution recognizes 65 ethnic communities. However, we have those that are marginalized, including the Batwa, who we are discussing today, who are hunter-gatherers, the Benet, the Ik, also hunter-gatherers, the Karamojong, Basongora, who are pastoralists. And I think I had somebody in the audience talk about the different articles that speak to rights that are covered within our constitution. I'll speak to them as we go along the presentation. So of course, we have talked about the Batwa who face systemic discrimination, land dispossession from conservation and development projects, as well as poverty and exclusion from social services. And the Batwa, as mentioned earlier, are one of the most severely affected. And in some spaces, they are called conservation refugees. And I just want to speak just briefly to who they are. I know this has been covered by our consultant, but they are forest-dwelling peoples who are found in southwestern Uganda, hunter-gatherers, and they've historically lived in the windy impenetrable Gahinga Gorilla National Park and the Chua Central Forest Reserve. They have a very distinct culture, and I think we've seen that in the pictures, their livelihoods and spiritual ties to forest. The population is about 6,200 to 6,700, and they are among the oldest surviving indigenous communities, and they have lived in harmony with nature until we interfered. That's just a map that shows where they come from. And today we'll be talking more about their ancestral lands that are found in those wind impenetrable Gahinga and the Chua. And it's important to note that these were not empty forests, they were Batwa homelands, and this land was owned customarily even prior to the declaration of the British Protectorate over Uganda. And documents have showed that from the 1930s to present day, successive governments have done acts amounting to displacement, exclusion, dispossession of the Batwa from their ancestral lands. And these have turned into protected areas. And of course, this was done with no consultation, consent, or even due compensation. And the violations of the Batwa people's rights are largely framed under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, that is the right to life, survival as a people, the right to property, customary land rights, right to self-determination, right to freely dispose of natural resources, economic, social, and cultural rights, a right to equality and non-discrimination, rights to education. I think this has been talked about: health, housing, development, and political participation. Though a consultant told us that we have one individual, Batwa, who is serving in the local council committee. And the consequences of this displacement, of course, has led to intergenerational harm. Half of the Batwa remained landless, living under extreme conditions of poverty and food security. There's a cultural erosion. They have lost their sacred sites and only being given, a couple of days a week to access these sites. They have lost their herbal and ecological knowledge. And of course, there's a health crisis and a social disintegration and dependency. The current situation as at today is that the Batwa remain highly marginalized. They are politically underrepresented and live as squatters. And this, I think, has been mentioned by a consultant. And their cultural identity and livelihoods, of course, are under threat. There is ongoing advocacy and actions by different civil society organizations, but land disposition remains largely unresolved. And this exclusion and dispossession has become a daily injustice. When the Batwa are accessing the forest, it's a criminal act. They are being harassed, and there's persistent discrimination from the host communities. And largely these patterns are also seen with the Bennett and the Ik communities. And conservation enforcement has become a tool of exclusion. The legal frameworks, thankful to one of the participants who talked about the different articles within our constitution, but Article 32 largely covers the affirmative action for marginalized groups. There's also Article 20, the fundamental and other human rights and freedoms, Article 36, protection of rights of minorities, and Article 37, right to culture and similar rights. There are other rights, of course, but I'll not go much into them. The Land Act of 1998 recognizes customary land rights, but allows exclusions for protected areas. We have environmental laws that are prioritizing conservation, over indigenous land rights. And although we have all these laws on paper, implementation and practice are largely not happening. Robert, in his opening remarks, talked about the Batwa case. It's important to note that this was filed in 2013 and judgment was only passed in 2021. So, just looking at that period also is an injustice in itself. But the issues that were raised with this case at the Constitutional Court was that there was a forced displacement of the Batwa from their ancestral lands, a denial of customary land rights, marginalization, poverty, and cultural erosion, and of course, a failure of the state to provide affirmative action for the Batwa. And the findings of the court acknowledge the historical injustices, affirmed that the Batwa are marginalized groups, deserving of special constitutional protection, and of course upheld their rights. The court also found that the state actions had severely undermined Batwa survival, dignity, and development, and held that the government failed to fulfill its constitutional duty under Article 32 of affirmative action. Of course, there were orders and remedies taking affirmative action for the Batwa, which are grounded in our Constitution, Article 32, but also the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and of course the UN DRIP. The affirmative action covers a broad spectrum, including land and natural resource justice, education-specific measures, health and social protections, livelihood and economic empowerment, cultural protection, and as well as political inclusion and representation. Of course, one of the other orders was a consideration of compensation and access to their lands, forests. The significance of this case is that it's the first high-level judicial acknowledgement of Batwa historical land dispossession, and it is a major step towards reparative justice. Of course, there are challenges within our judicial system. The matter was referred to the High Court to implement the orders, but this has not yet resulted in full redress. The government, through the Attorney General and the Uganda Wildlife Authority, appealed the Constitutional Court's decision to the Supreme Court. And of course, this has paused the implementation of the remedies. And I think, as everybody here knows, there's a slow implementation of court judgments generally, but also customary land rights are still largely unrecognized. Uganda has not ratified the ILO Convention 169. And even if Uganda has got recommendations from countries like Guatemala during the Universal Periodic Review for us to ratify C-169. However, we haven't as a country. And yet C-169 explicitly names or recognizes indigenous peoples and has protections for them. Of course, we are inconsistent with an application of the UN DRIP, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. There's another court case. I will not delve deep into this one, but it is the 2013 Bennett case, and it is also similar to the Batwa case, of course. You know, eviction from the ancestral lands and the like. But I'll not go much into this one. There's a lot of similarity with the Batwa case. The Bennett are also indigenous people, and the court, of course, recognized their rights, their customary ownership, and but the eviction was done without due process and compensation, and all this process was unlawful. The key takeaways from the two cases is that Uganda's courts recognize historical injustices against indigenous and ethnic minority communities, and that customary land rights are key survival over conservation gazettement, but also that the Constitution requires affirmative action for marginalized groups. And our biggest challenge is political will and implementation of court judgments. This engagement we're having today, and of course the work and advocacy around the ethnic minorities, especially the Batwa, is very important work. Our constitution, first of all, recognizes that land belongs to all people of Uganda and may be held under, various specific land tenure systems. I will not go into them, but also that, the ethnic minority groups, the Bennett, the Ik, the Batwa, the Basongora, and others have lived on lands and used their lands prior to gazettement of these lands as conservation or protected areas. And the gazettement of the said lands has deprived communities of their land and rendered them landless and destitute. But most importantly, rights must be embedded not only in the courts, but in everyday governance systems. Conservation and development must not come at the cost of human dignity, survival, and justice, but also importantly that ethnic minority survival and biodiversity protection are mutual. They have lived within these lands of forests for a long time. So they are mutually reinforcing and not competing goals. And of course, justice is not charity, it is self-determined and community-led. There are key actors that have been mentioned when the consultant spoke about them. I'll just broadly categorize them here. Constitution and oversight bodies, the Equal Opportunities Commission. I don't know if they are with us today, but they were supposed to be. And of course, the Uganda Human Rights Commission, the IDG, the judiciary, respective ministries, parliament and political actors, the local governments, conservation bodies, Uganda Wildlife Authority and NFA, private sector actors, tourism actors, of course, the regional human rights bodies. I've talked about the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and different working groups on indigenous peoples, the international human rights mechanisms as well, development partners, civil society, public interest law firms, and ethnic minority institutions. And I think the Batwa have formed an association of some sort to champion their issues. And of course, the media and academia. And to advance ethnic minority rights and justice, we need to bring on board various tools, legal and non-legal tools. And the legal tools will work best with strategic advocacy and policy influence. And of course, with advocacy, we translate rights into political will. And once these are framed, we can have a pushback on constitutional obligations and poverty reduction and social inclusion. And the impact of any strategic advocacy will shift the discourse from welfare to rights and restitution. We also need to push a narrative change and public awareness. Changing public attitudes is essential for lasting justice. And we can bring on board the media here, have a culture of storytelling led by the community itself, have heritage events, something to just shed light on the situation of ethnic minorities, but a positive light, not a negative light. And of course, this means, we have to work with and include the ethnic minorities. And the other one is political mobilization and representation. Justice requires presence in decision-making spaces. And the ethnic minorities, but were inclusive, need to be supported in local council representation. I think the consultant mentioned somebody was representing the Batwa, one person represented the Batwa in the local council committee, but even in district planning processes or forums, national consultations, and in here is where we can even bring the element of women and youth and have them placed within these decision-making spaces. And if possible, advocate for a reserved or affirmative representation for the Batwa and other ethnic minorities. And of course, the impact of changing the whole narrative will be around moving ethnic minorities from the margins to the centers of various power spaces. We have community empowerment and capacity strengthening, and I think the consultant touched on this one. We need to build the capacity of ethnic minority groups. Robert talked about, how do they even know how they need to file a case? This certain capacity building needs to be done. Only strong communities can claim and defend their rights. And so we need to build their capacity around their rights, around how they can go about to address the specific issues. How do we help them create awareness of different processes that are available to them? How do we strengthen their community governance and collective decision-making as a people? And this in itself will, drive advocacy efforts. The other engagement will be around economic empowerment and livelihood restoration of the Batwa. Support income generating activities, build, use the cultural crafts or land-based livelihoods to build an ecotourism drive of sorts, but also most importantly, how do we link them to markets or cooperatives? There's power in numbers. And the other one would be advocating for direct benefit sharing from tourism revenues. And in all of this, we are looking at reducing dependency and vulnerabilities. So how do we strengthen them and get them out of poverty? The other point is rights-based conservation engagement actions. There can be a space to promote multiple use zones and cultural access rights. The consultant talked about they're given specific days, number of days in a week to access the forest. But we need to promote this. There needs to be more of this access. Remember, this is where they lived. And maybe the conservation staff can be trained on human rights and free and prior informed consent, or even generally advocate for a reform of conservation practices and policies, that they don't need to be exclusionary as they are currently. And this, in essence, will transform conflict to collaboration per se. The other one would be research, documentation, and evidence building. Evidence strengthens all non-legal strategies. And here we can document oral histories, cultural practices, of course, the impact of displacement. The consultant has shared with us some pictures, but also mapping their ancestral lands, their resource use, and produce data on poverty, health, and education gaps. And this, in essence, would be able to inform advocacy, even funding and policy reforms. The last one is international solidarity and diplomatic pressure, engaging the UN special rapporteurs on indigenous peoples, housing, poverty, and this is also a space where we can build solidarity with ethnic minority movements across Africa. And there are systems in place. We can also use the universal periodic the universal periodic review mechanism, and different treaty bodies that Uganda has engaged with, but also the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So there are platforms that can be engaged. And maybe, if possible, mobilize diaspora and global civil society campaigns to push back on the current situation of ethnic minorities. But most importantly, in all these actions, in everything that we can do today, ethnic minorities is effective when all these tools are working together in a combination of sorts, and not just using one tool at a time. Lastly, ensuring justice and rights requires integrated action, legal enforcement, affirmative policies, inclusive conservation, community leadership, and sustained advocacy across state, government, civil society, regional, and international actors. There are actors that are there. I talked about the civil society, the wildlife, Uganda Wildlife Authority, different conservation bodies, but we need concerted effort to strengthen and advance rights and justice for ethnic minorities. So thank you, moderator. I know I've gone overboard beyond my 15 minutes, but thank you so much.
Okay, another round of applause to her. Thank you so much, Joanita, for the presentation. You raised very important issues. I learned that justice is not charity.
Excuse me, you are so far, you sound far. Can hardly hear you.
Just to appreciate the presentation that you made, raising key issues, of course, empowerment being a core, that we need to empower the Batwa, but also we learn that justice is not charity, and it's only the strong communities that can claim and defend their rights. So moving forward, and also you say we need, the presentation highlights sustainable advocacy is required. So with that, we won't get comments, but I know this has been insightful. I'll just request Mr. Irumba to comment on the questions and comments that were raised.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for the comments provided here. And many of them were there in a good spirit, intended to improve the report. There are their recommendations on how to improve the report, many of them. But nevertheless, I want to point out a few, kind of respond to a few comments. On the articles, different articles and policy and documents, these ones I just intentionally put have to mention them about them. But obviously you cannot have a report like this without including them. So there's some reports. I just left them out. And then the other aspect is on the extent how far the scope of the solutions. We have the constitution here might have been on the protected areas. Not protected areas covers, if you wanted to define it, covers even forest coverage further. Although sometimes people think that protected areas just mean the others. A forest reserve is also a protected area, but at different levels of conservation. So why the concentration has been more on this is the fact that these guys were staying in those places, and by geographical location, you find that most of them concentrated around there. But in terms of other natural sources like wetlands and so on, you have some sources like the URP, which is working with wetland, conserving actually the wetland, which is the river. So they are also there. They are also being covered that time. And of course, like you said, the climate impacts, these are affecting them. And there was even a study under care that time when about some of the diseases, and it was found that it was actually affecting them. It was the children especially, because of the kind of weather that they are being exposed to. And so it's a fact that the kind of housing the Bata State I don't know how they say that first. Because in the forest, maybe they don't know. They are saying those good houses, but it's not something. And so the housing, Pina has pointed out there are alternatives. We are talking about the same language. These houses you are seeing, they are squatters. The houses are built on squatters, or where they are squatting and they are being used as very. And let us not also try to come up with things. You know, for me, when for us we are doing our work, we go down to the community. This one was a situation analysis. What is the situation there? They are seeing in those houses built of tarpaulins and that kind of mess. That is the part. Because some friends are happening where the butter are having some houses, but you have many of them living in that kind of housing. So let us not say things have changed. Let us still know that we are still having a problem and we should face it as it is. But this thing of saying these things that yes, they are changing, and I kept saying yesterday this and this, but how much of that? So we still have some changes happening, but we are not working. Even with the efforts are being put. So we still have work to do to uplift the lifestyles. Schools, the schools where we have schools and what, yes, government is saying, yes, we want the water to continue, please take. But you have those challenges. I mean, again, other children, the water will not stay hungry and they remain in school. The fees, who is paying the examination fees and all that? So it's still a challenge, even when there is some bit of community to say, have you got to school, have you got to school? So you still have those gaps that need to be addressed. And once those are not addressed, you are not going to, now, an educated motor like that may not want to go that gathering. That is, we don't go gathering when single plants or fire to say. Because for them, they have been educated. So the moment you are not educated, they are not educated. They have to rely on those resources. And so from the conservation side, you say they are encroaching, they are doing that, and they are doing this. Then in terms of the battle, I think it was where they are scattered. You can see they are taking Buduja and Buduja because of the Semitic National Park. Because that's where they should stay. They are in Kanongo, they are in Soro, they are in Rwanda, and all of them concentrated around there. And then the police, I'm talking to police. The issue is not that they refused to talk to us. The issue is at the time we went, there was a concentration of activity. That's why I was saying that there is one who has agreed to talk to us. Not that they had refused, but that time you would see that they were busy, and then also our time frame was different. So we had to move away, but we shall still talk to them and see. And then the other issue of which Penna has talked about of the rains, that's why we had to bring it in. Because that issue has been around for a long time, that you don't want to stay in the house because when the rains is not happening. We went and found it again, so we have brought it. Now that's the same, we remove it. Yes, and because this was the validation meeting, we can remove it. But we wanted to listen to the voices that are coming from their side. This thing is still lingering around, and people say, we were not there to wait for the rain to start raining and then to see the water getting. So, and then the other thing is that we need to understand the battle in terms of whatever interventions are taking place. They're not taking their place uniformly. Some places where the battle are, things are better than others. So we need to understand that one and identify those pockets where things are better than other places. And I think that should be the interest. Maybe that's why you may not hear a lot of talk about the other battle, maybe, but there's a whole king the other side of the battle. And then people talking about that one. So we need to look at where do we want to touch? Can we touch everything at the same time? See, the same thing with the cultural center and the classroom center they are talking about. It will be a group of people who will say, for us, we want it here. But what has the other one said to the other side? And this is a tribe, by the way. So are you going to put something for the tribe, or you are putting a particular group of people in a different place? So it's going to be handled case by case. And then the other cultures that are disappearing, I think that one Emily will handle. Who is the report targeted? That is for Emily as well. But also this report, how much of it can it have? Because for us, we have specific objectives and we are working along those objectives. So there are so many issues, interesting issues, but we shall not have all of them in this report. We shall put what is possible. About the stimulus bills, I think it's an interesting one. This must be government website. They have said, is it true that the stimulus bills actually cure cancer? But what is happening is when we contacted the OA, there is something they are doing. They are involving the partner, I think around 7 people somewhere, to identify and assess and identify the medicinal plants. They want to prepare a booklet for the medicinal plants, and what is there now for the partner is that they will be the ones to be selling this booklet. And there are issues of copyright there, because I'm thinking us. So when you start selling the booklet that has medicines for that, how do they benefit? Are you not selling them later and whatever about this? So there are all those, but there is something which you should not look on the lookout, because I think it is well intentioned, but maybe it might have challenges with those issues of copyright that is there. Maybe because there are so many medicines that they want to offering around. Then I think the others, I want to appreciate, and I have documented all these comments, and we have, as we write more into these comments, I think when we reach out to some of you to still give us more information, please do not hesitate to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Around the back,
the comments.
This one, and I want to insist, where I think we are saying people are using platforms for their selfish interests. I think we should all get interested, because this allegation has come from society. I don't know that it's competition. It has come from government. It has even come from the voter themselves. So we should be able to be interested in this and see who is using who to gain what.
Okay, thank you so much. So, there are those things of further investigation. You recommend that the next researcher investigates, so that is another area away from the situation analysis. So we note that so many issues have come up, and I note a very big gap on data. When the question keeps coming of the matter, how many are accessing education? How many have this? So it is something that to do with data, and also analyzing the different programs to see how many people are actually benefiting. So with all that and all the key highlights you've noted, we want to come to a close, and I will invite Mr. Robert Bachika to make a way forward. Then you will close. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Can you join us in applauding our presenters, facilitators, and consultants, and also our moderator, most important. I think that we have noted as well. We're supposed to leave this press by 5 minutes. And you can see how matters relating to BATWA. By the way, we are only talking over one ethnic minority group. We are not talking about the other so many graphs. But I worked with Penina. I don't remember. Penina, when did we start working together? Zaninka. I've suffered
Hello.
with Zaninka.
Hello? Yes, Robert. Yes, Robert. I started working with them in the year 2000 when they established this organization. Most of the issues raised, maybe if the consultation was done by then, I would say yes. But currently, there is some improvement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The reason why I was asking Penina to show you the cooperation in civil society. We worked with Penina, I think, as early as 2000. 2010-24. How many years are now? These are over 25 years. And I still pick a call and I call Penina and say, Penina, I need this information. One time when we were in the Jeff Council meeting in the US, I asked Penina, you think indigenous people are not becoming sedentarized because many of the indigenous peoples were having MacBooks. And me, I didn't have a MacBook. That was the joke when we were in the Jeff Council meetings way back in Washington. Now, we have gotten an overview of the situation. There are some observations we need to sharpen. There are those which we are going to follow up with Ubuntu and clarify. So I will encourage the consultant to do the needful. But also there are some recommendations. I would encourage the consultant to visit the High Court and the police. These emanate from also the presentation made by Joanita. And Joanita, thank you for reminding us the constitutional petition of 2013. This petition clarified some things. It clarified that the Batwa was a marginalized group. We together. It did not call them special indigenous peoples, as we call them. Remember, it was the Ubuntu and others who had taken the Anthology challenge and have their rights, so how the Batwa were possibly evicted. Yes, Joanita has told us, as usual, government is bright. It went and challenged the declarations in the constitutional petition in the Supreme Court. Now, any one of you among us and our council behind there, you know, for you to go to fight in the Supreme Court, how expensive it can be, isn't it? And I think that explains why Ubuntu and others did not try to also take the war up to the Supreme Court. But there are things we should pick from if you are talking about issues of Batwas are given portions of land, they are cultivating, there are some groups which are building them homes, giving them tanks. But you see, doing things on wishful thinking does not change the status quo. Okay? Meaning that if these good-hearted people like who would stop, Batwa would go back in an appealing situation, the constitutional petition declared. Because it did declare that these people were in an appealing situation. Therefore, there was a need to determine appropriate affirmative action for the Batwa people. Now, my good counsel here will tell me whether challenging the whole declaration or you can challenge part. But for me, I think our consultants should go to High Court and find out whether this declaration were from the Constitutional Court, which required High Court to determine appropriate affirmative action affirmative action measure for the Badwa people was considered? And if yes, what did the High Court do? I think we can start from there. If you're talking about issues of rights, issues of justice, because even if we have very good NBS intervention, when the same rights we are talking about not respected, but will easily fall back in climate negotiations. We call it backtracking. They will easily fall back in their appealing situation, where they still need to negotiate intervals with UA to go and they worship or they exercise their culture, religious, and spiritual rights. Because for them, their gods are in the forest, but they can't access that forest. Just imagine if a born again Christian to access a pitch, you have to ask for permission. That is the same spirit you should put yourself as these people. We know very well that land has become a challenge. Even if they are to pilot this NBS intervention, when they don't have the basic right of occupants, or even lease, it will be difficult to practice nature-based solution. So you can see how things interrelate. Therefore, I would suggest that the consultants sharpen the recommendations such that the recommendations are action-oriented, sequence them, those that require local governments, we are able to go through our partners, districts, and have another dialogue with the local government. Those that require governments through, for example, High Court, judiciary, and other, those ones, it will depend on the interaction you have with the judiciary, especially the High Court, referring to the constitutional petition of 2013 of Ugudu and others versus the Attorney General who are other. Lastly, would be now those actions for battle. Also what we think, and then their neighboring communities. For me, I think we would have done a good service with these marginalized groups. So I think we are clear. Constitutionally, we don't have indigenous peoples, local communities. In advocacy, legally, we know marginalized what? Groups. Are we together? So, the use of these terminologies, Mr. Consultant, now should also be clarified. Legally, they are all categorized as marginalized what? Groups. We don't have any reference of indigenous peoples and the local communities constitutionally. There is another recommendation which was made on the issue of ratification of ILO 169. Joanita, you know where and the Penino. For the last 10 years, we have tried this. The government told us it will not recognize special. We need the magic. Now that the principal judge is also coming from a marginalized community, maybe we can talk to the principal judge to think through how she can protect the siblings and relatives in the near future by trying to entice government rectifying the ILO 169. That is the only international instrument which recognizes indigenous people's rights. Failure to have that, you are dilly-dally. So these are our actions. We will share with you the improved report next year. We don't want to put consultants pressure not to miss the joyful festival season, but we pledge to share with you the report in January. But we need the consultants to share the report at least before the end of the year. And also have these consultations because we know court has closed, but some offices are open. At least if we can get an update on some of these declarations, especially the one which was for High Court. I find in 2015, they were talking, 2013, they were talking about 2025, those are 12 years. That is the minimum time I can come and I settle on your land and I claim ownership. Did you know that? That if I sit on your land for 12 years, I am entitled to benefit interest. So we need to really check that. And let's look forward you to respect the deadline. Now, as I conclude, I want to thank our colleagues online who have sustained this, and thank you so much the team from Obudu. We want to thank the community development officer and others, including yourselves in the room. Can you come back? So it is the 5:30. Thank you for your indulgence. Logistically speaking, we have planned and delivered a modest refund to each of you, catered for your transport. Our online colleagues, we have provided your data. Please, if you don't receive it today, call before close of today, because we also close. Tomorrow, we have a workshop, a very interesting workshop for those of you who are doing climate mitigation, adaptation in forests. We have had a desk study, that this desk study is introducing the new interesting information, forest emissions and removals, and the state of play. We are validating this study tomorrow. And for those of you who can join us online, a link is going to be shared. I would request my colleagues to share with all of you that link, such that you join us tomorrow as we discuss Uganda's forest mitigation potential and how much we are meeting from the current behavior of changing forests to other land uses. I want to say, for those we won't meet tomorrow, we wish you joyful festival season. This is the time for family. Those of you who don't have families, it's time for friends. It is time to really go and reflect with one another. And we wish you a blessed 2026 and look forward to continue to work with all of you next year. I want to declare this dialogue officially closed. Thank you.
We have a dismissal. We have tea and departure at leisure.